Welcome to episode 9 of the Princeton Podcast with Mayor Mark Freda. In this episode, Mark sat down with Dwaine Williamson, a Princeton Councilman who has served on a variety of Princeton's boards and committees. In addition to their conversation on the many benefits of community service, Dwaine described his journey from the Caribbean islands to his youth in Trenton, his position at Merrill Lynch, his experiences with his wife while raising their families as residents of Griggs Farm, as well as the importance of his educational experiences leading to his law degree and his current legal practice. This is an enjoyable episode, so without any further introduction, let's join our host, Mark Freda, and his guest, Dwaine Williamson, for episode 9 of the Princeton Podcast.
Dwaine, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So we're going to ask you some questions. We're going to touch on your time on council and community service and just what a great guy you are. So first question, I think most people know you from your time on the Princeton Council, but you're about to end that. So how big a decision was that for you to decide not to run again?
Well, first of all, I have to say it was a tremendous opportunity for me to serve the wonderful people of Princeton. And I wish I could continue to serve here. Of course, there are a lot of demands on time and things like that. And so one of the reasons I decided not to run for re-election is, as most of us know, I grew up in the city of Trenton and I maintain my law office there. And as much as I've lived in Princeton for about 23 years now, but I'm in Trenton on most days also. And unfortunately, we hear all the things that's happening there. Trenton has a lot of potential. And one of the things I'm thinking is that, people are literally dying there. And we read what happens in the papers and the news, et cetera. With a finite amount of time, I've decided to give a lot of my time resources to seeing what we can do to rehabilitate my first adopted hometown. When I say adopted, I'm originally, as we know, from the island of Jamaica, but when my family immigrated here, we settled in Trenton, where I attended public schools. So as much as I would love to continue serving the people of Princeton, I really feel Trenton is in dire straits, and I really would like to dedicate a lot of time to seeing what we can do to make our capital city and county seat better.
Yeah, make us proud to have Trenton as the capital city again, which has changed. It has changed a lot over several decades, which is unfortunate.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so we're just focusing on Princeton for a little bit before we go to Trenton.
Oh, absolutely.
So to speak. In your time on the Princeton Council, you've been on different council committees and you've been liaison to a number of different boards, committees, commissions. Could you kind of just, maybe highlight a couple of those that maybe were the most interesting or your favorites or whatever?
Right. It's like picking favorites among children. Not to compare my BCCs to children, but I love them all. I'll go down the list. I served on the Recreation Board, on the Princeton Housing Authority, on the Affordable Housing Board, on the Corner House Board, and also the Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance Board. And the wonderful thing about all of them is they all contribute to just different facets of a wonderful life here in town. We know we have an amazing town. I don't know if everyone remembers this, but Luminosity, according to luminosity.com, we are, out of all the municipalities in all the counties, in all the states in our country, we here in Princeton and Palo Alto, California, we're considered the smartest. We have the highest average IQ. It was a Luminosity article from about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, right? So we're full of a lot of very well-educated, intelligent people, and we have a wonderful university. We do great things, and our BCCs are among along with our municipal, of course, mayor and council and our municipal staff are the ones who get a lot of the work done to keep Princeton being a wonderful town. They have a real commitment to equity, and which is always one of my main issues that I try to assure is in the work we do. And I just worked with such wonderful volunteers. They all brought very different levels of expertise. I mean, some of the greatest minds in our entire world are right here, and many of them serve on these BCCs. And it was just been just an honor and a pleasure to work with them.
Yeah, it's interesting. The BCCs, as we call them, and most people don't always get that, but it's the boards, committees, and commissions. So
that's right.
The
it's
BCCs.
The
yeah, right. It's a great way for people in town to get involved in the town, right? Because as you said, we have all these citizens, so it's we should maybe make a pitch for people.
Let's make a pitch right now. I mean, this is the season. 'Tis the season for you to volunteer for BCCs. Please go to the Princeton Municipal website. All the information is there. There are many vacancies. We can always use the extra help. So please get there. We want a diverse participation among different ethnicities, different income levels, different areas of expertise. Please go out there and help to make our wonderful town even better.
There you go. Great plug. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So prior to being on council, what else did you do in town politically? Had you done other things before?
Sure. My political career really started with the Princeton Community Democratic Organization, the PCDO. I started going to a lot of the PCDO events, like the monthly events, et cetera. And PCDO is such a wonderful organization. It's of course, it is a democratic group made up of many progressives in town. What they do, though, is they just bring a lot of issues to light. They bring in a lot of experts. They have great panels. So, in fact, let me credit one person in particular, Owen O'Donnell. Owen O'Donnell was the one who I was in town. Owen invited me to a PCDO meeting. I started going there. Eventually, got onto the PCDO executive board. And when Owen was chair, I was vice chair of the PCDO. In addition to that, I was the District 22 committeeman for the Princeton Democratic Municipal Committee. So serving the neighborhood around Griggs Farm, where I still reside.
Right. So thank you, Owen, for dragging Dwaine into the
politics, right?
Into the process, right? But it's also good to see, right, that there's a pathway for people. You could get. And whether you're a Democrat or Republican, there's political party organizations for both. I mean, but anybody in town, I mean, there's many ways to kind of dip your feet, join your political party's local committee, join one of the BCCs, but, get to know the community more. And, if you want to someday run for council, then that's a possibility. Hey,
that's the wonderful thing about democracy.
Yep. So you mentioned you're from Jamaica. So tell us a little bit about, you were born in Jamaica. Did you live there 2 hours, 2 months, 2 decades?
Maybe a couple years.
Well, whatever.
Yeah, I left pretty young. So the journey to the States, technically, this is the 4th country I've lived in, which is kind of interesting. So I was born in Jamaica, up in I was going to say the deep country. In this case, it was very elevated, so up in the hills. And no, I'm not going to disrespect the people of West Virginia. I was going to say the West Virginia of Jamaica. No, West Virginia, I'm sure, is a wonderful state with wonderful people, with wonderful towns and wonderful countryside. But I only say that to say where I grew up in Jamaica was extremely rural. Rural to the point where we didn't have indoor plumbing. Someone forgot to build indoor plumbing for the house. So we had to go to like a district pipe, as they call it, in the morning to get our day's water for bathing and cooking and things like that. So very developing in a developing country. Even though much of Jamaica is very advanced, very developed, we were in the deep countryside. But at a certain point, one part I don't remember. My mother told me we lived in the Bahamas for a few months because my biological father happens to be from Nassau, Bahamas. He passed away. So we lived there for a few months. That part I don't remember. I remember living on the island of Bermuda because my stepfather, who my mother had married, is from Bermuda. And I remember we lived there for about 1.5 years. It was just a great time. I remember when I was a child. And then we came to this place called Trenton, New Jersey. So I often ask my mother, okay, what's the story there? And we came in the dead of winter, never saw snow before. It was cold. And it was a little gray so we left very bright, sunny, beautiful Bermuda. And I was trying to figure out the story there. And I'll tell you a very quick version of that story. The quick version is my aunt, Freda Campbell, who actually worked for some families here. She was actually a housekeeper for Phyllis Marshall for many years, and actually a housekeeper for the Burns for many years. I mean, going back into like the 70s, et cetera. My aunt happened to meet an American tourist in Jamaica who happens to come from a town called Hightstown in Mercer County. We had no family members here, had no connections to this country. And so my aunt and this lady remained friends. They were like pen pals in the 70s. Eventually, this lady sponsored my aunt and her husband, my Uncle Robbie, or Robert, we call him Uncle Robbie, to move to the States. And wherever that aunt goes, usually my mother follows. And then the lady told her, oh, there's this city nearby. It's called Trenton. It could get, more affordable housing, jobs, etc. So my aunt and uncle went to this place called Trenton. My family's never heard of before, in this place called New Jersey. And then, voila, my mother decides to come here with myself and my siblings. And unfortunately, she was divorcing her husband, who was in Bermuda at the time, my stepfather. And we came to this place called Trenton. And I still remember my mother saying, we're only going to be here for 2 weeks. Now, how many decades ago was that? So that's the story. That's how we got here.
A little longer.
Right.
That's amazing. Okay. Hey, so let's just fast forward a little bit. So you were in Trenton. You went to the public schools there, right. I imagine.
Graduated Trenton High School in class of 89. Go Tornadoes.
There you go. There you go. So, we know you're an attorney, but so why don't you tell us about where you went for your undergrad and then you went to law school. So
sure.
Tell us about that.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So if you ever go to my high school yearbook, right beneath my picture, the picture with the formal picture with the tuxedo, it says, I want to major in international relations undergrad, and then I want to go to law school. And so what did I do? When I was graduating from Trenton High, I applied to Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. At the time, I thought I wanted to be a diplomat, possibly join the U.S. State Department. And so thank God I got accepted there. So I graduated high school 89, went to Georgetown from 89 till I graduated in 93. And I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Foreign Service is the name of the degree, BSFS. And my major was International Politics, Relations, Law, and Organization. Georgetown likes a lot of very long names and everything. In fact, the degree is in Latin, and I don't really speak Latin, so I can't read my own degree, but I do recognize my name on it. And it says Rebus Exteris, which I think means Foreign Service, right? So it's interesting because while I was an undergrad, I used to intern with Merrill Lynch through a program called Inroads. It's a program that was started in Chicago by a priest in Chicago who thought a lot of talent in America's urban centers are going untapped. So he tried to connect a lot of that talent with corporations. And so the Inroads program grew out of that. So through Inroads, and mostly minority kids, or I should say children of color. And so through that, I got an internship with Merrill Lynch. So when I graduated Georgetown, Merrill offered me this really nice position. And it just took me on a different track because I thought I was going to the State Department. So after 2 summers working for Merrill, and during the interview process, I was picked up at the airport in a limousine and everything. And then I saw the bright lights, big city, and, they sent me brochures with the Manhattan skyline. And all of a sudden, I ended up working at Merrill Lynch. And I started in their executive trainee program, they called it. Stayed there for about 6 years total. It wasn't really what I wanted. My plan was actually to go first to law school. And as I mentioned, going to the diplomatic corps, that was my plan. Or I was even thinking about maybe some of the intelligence services, like the Central Intelligence Agency or something like that, like a lot of my classmates end up doing. So, but anyways, end up staying at Merrill. And so now I became a Wall Street person, became a financial consultant, which is the term Merrill uses for stockbrokers. I did some marketing, product development, the financial consulting. I actually had an internet company for a couple of years. So I left Merrill in 99. I got caught up in the whole internet wave because I used to be involved in independent films and independently produced music and things like that with a couple of partners of mine. And ended up doing an internet company for a couple of years. And that was from 99 until about 2001. Just couldn't raise the amount of venture capital that actually the internet company I did by myself as a separate company from my two partners on the independent film and independent music marketing, and I just couldn't raise the capital. And then when you're on Wall Street, your licensees you have to be associated with a registered broker dealer if 2 years passes and you're not associated, your licenses automatically expire. So as my 2 years were about to end, I'm like, wait a minute, I got a lot of great licenses I worked really hard for, Series 7, Series 63, all those things. I said, I need to get back on Wall Street. So I applied to Solomon Smith Barney, which was at the time when Solomon Brothers merged with Smith Barney, which was Merrill Lynch's main competitor. And for some reason I said, I don't feel like going back to Merrill, so I'll do something new. End up working in Manhattan. Happened to be there during 9/11, so witnessed all of 9/11. And after 9/11, I started really thinking to myself, and there's a whole set of stories in that in of itself. Just started thinking to myself, I want to go on the plan that I want to go on, which I said I was going to go to law school. So that's what I did. So I end up going back to law school, and the rest is history.
That's a great story. It's
Thanks.
amazing where people go and how you get to where you eventually get to.
Tell me about it. My aunt met a lady from Hightstown that ended up here.
Yeah, there you go. Who would have known?
Right. Tell me about it.
So, okay. So you go to law school.
Uh-huh.
You get your law degree.
Right.
All right. So how do you end up back in Trenton, Princeton, or or where did you end up? So what happened right after law school? And then how the heck did you get back here?
Well, what happened was, when I graduated undergrad, I was very much involved in this organization called the United Nations Association of the USA. And a lot of the faculty at Princeton's, the former Woodrow Wilson School now, who are, of course, Woodrow Wilson School of International Relations. So a lot of the faculty there were also members of the UNA USA. UNA USA is a domestic organization which tries to get more political support for United Nations activities. So because of that, I used to go to a lot of meetings at the former Woodrow Wilson School. And I just loved being in Princeton. And at the time when I finished undergrad, I moved back to Trenton. So this is even while I was on Wall Street. So I was involved in this organization. So I used to be here all the time. And then, as I mentioned earlier, my aunt and actually my mother also, they were, and actually not just my Aunt Berta, who I mentioned was the first one to come here, but other aunts followed. My mother had 9 sisters. Some have since passed, but she started off with 9 sisters. And a few of them literally were, I hate to say your stereotypical Jamaican housekeepers, but they were housekeepers, and for many of the families here in Princeton. So I actually used to come to Princeton as a kid. And in fact, I used to vacuum living rooms in Princeton as a kid. I'll go with my mom sometimes, and I just happen to be, I'll help out. Yeah. So that was my first introduction to Princeton, which is really interesting. So of course, later on in life, as I mentioned, I used to come to over at the former Woodrow Wilson School. And I remember after one meeting, we were over at Small World Coffee, which had just opened maybe a few years before. And I was with just a few friends from the UNA USA. And I mentioned that I need to buy a house, and I'm looking for somewhere to purchase a house. And someone mentioned, there's this complex right up 206. It's called Griggs Farm. You should check it out. I've never heard of it before. So, of course, I decided to go drive and explore. Found out there's this complex called Griggs Farm. And as we know, Griggs Farm is a inclusionary complex where you have half of the units are affordable housing units, half are market. And I ended up I went to look at one unit that was for sale, found out a new whole street was being planned with new units, ended up buying one of the new units before it got built. And so that had to be in 98. So then I moved to Princeton with my fiance at the time, who I've since married. And of course, she's the mother of my 3 children, who's Dwaine Williamson. She's a teacher in the Trenton Public Schools. So, and who I knew from high school. So we were friends, and we didn't date in high school, but we were friends in at Trenton High. and been in Princeton ever since.
There you go. All right. Yeah. So now that you opened the door to that you do have a family, it's not just you. So, just tell us a little bit. You said you're married, you have children. So how many children, male, female, what are they doing?
Okay. I have a son and 2 daughters. So when we moved here, my son he did preschool in Trenton. When we moved here, he came here just in time to start kindergarten. So he went through Trenton Public School. We went to Trenton Public Schools, my wife and Trina. My son went to Princeton Public Schools all the way through kindergarten and graduated Princeton High School in 2016. My 2 daughters were already here when they were born. So all they've known is life in Princeton. All my children went to Lillibrook, then the former JW, graduated Princeton High School. So now my son, who I mentioned, graduated. Actually, no, I'm sorry. He graduated Princeton High School in 2012, went to Rutgers in New Brunswick, did really well at Rutgers. He played football at Princeton High, couldn't play college football. He had a hairline fracture. Orthopedic thought it wouldn't be a good idea for him to continue playing football. Did really well at Rutgers. He was Dean's List every single semester, so was well prepared from the Princeton Public Schools. Graduated cum laude. He was admitted to the Honor Society, the Greek Letter Honor Society for his major. And my father-in-law comes into all this because my father-in-law is a well-decorated military veteran who's mentioned in books on combat and was honored with he's buried at Arlington National Cemetery, actually. So he was, which is an honor. It's not easy to, right. I don't want to say get a place in Arlington. That's a little morbid, but because of his exemplary military career, they offered to have him buried there. So I bring that up to say he was a huge influence on my son growing up, just meeting all his veteran buddies. My father-in-law was combat wounded in both Korea and Vietnam. So I think because of that, my son got really interested in the military. And every year, my father-in-law and his friends will have a reunion somewhere in the country. It'll be in Seattle, Washington. It'll be, let's say, Atlanta, Georgia. They'll pick a different city. And my father-in-law used to bring my son with him. So I think that's why Dwaine got so interested in the military. So after he graduated Rutgers, he attended Officer Candidate School for the Marine Corps down in Quantico, Virginia, and became got his commission as a Marine officer. So my son served with the Marine Corps, mainly stationed in Japan, but also served in the Middle East. And it's a lot of stories from the Middle East. A lot he says he couldn't tell me because a lot of them he did a lot of covert operations and things like that in the Middle East out of Al Udeid, which is Central Command Headquarters. Al Udeid in Qatar, as they call it now. When I was a kid, it used to be Qatar. These days it's Qatar, and some pronounce it Qatar. So a lot of activities there. And he had a 4-year commitment, which he extended by 6 months. And so now he finished his active duty commitment. He's back home in Princeton. Now he's trying to figure out his next move. He's been doing a lot of day trading with stocks. He's telling me he's making more money than I'm making. It's probably true. And he's been just doing a lot of traveling on his own and having a great time. My 2 daughters are both in undergrad. So my older daughter, who's my middle child, Leah is a senior at Savannah College of Art and Design in Georgia. She started as a film animation major. She's doing a bachelor's of fine arts. Started as a film animation major, and now she is doing video game design. And my youngest child, who's my younger daughter, Raina, is a sophomore at Montclair State University. Let me tell her claim to fame. Raina was a track star at Princeton High School. In fact, when she graduated, she had the record for having the most records on Princeton's all-time track and field record board. Wow. Raina, 4 was with her relay team. They were like Mercer County champions, et cetera, and regional champions. And 2 were on her own. She was like top 5 heptathlon, 7 events in the entire state. And so she's actually a film major at Montclair State now.
It's interesting. It's great how they're all getting their own lives.
Right, absolutely.
That's a great thing.
They don't listen to me. They really do have their own lives. Right.
So, okay, let's just jump back to the whole law thing for a second. You're an attorney.
Yes.
You have your own firm.
Yes.
What kind of area of the law do you focus on?
Well, that's actually a Princeton story, too, when it comes to law practice. All right, so I'm at Rutgers. I went to Rutgers Law School. And the reason why I chose Rutgers is, I had a wife and 3 kids. I had to eat, so to speak. I had to work and eat at the time. I couldn't do like many undergrad students those who graduate undergrad go straight to law school, and you go to law school full time and don't have to work. So the entire time I was in law school, I worked a full-time job. And the great thing about Rutgers is that it accommodates that. So they have what they call the evening program. So they actually have all the classes you need for law school in the evenings, starting at like 6 p.m. So I would work from 8:30 to 4:30 and then go to classes for the rest of the night. And what it does, it stretches out your year just by your time in law school by 1 year. So 3 years is common. However, because the American Bar Association has a rule, if you work more than 20 hours a week, you're not allowed to take more than 15 or more credits. You have to take less than 15, so 14 max credits per semester. They basically don't want law students killing themselves. So that's what I did. Now, the Princeton side of that story is when I moved to Griggs Farm, I met a couple, which remain some of my best friends. Michelle Tuck Ponder, who's the former mayor of Princeton Township, and her husband, Ronald Ponder. And Ronald, at the time, was a career attorney who's now retired. So I mentioned to Ronald that I'm finishing up law school. I graduated law school in 2007. Immediately took the bar. Thank God I passed the bar the first time. That was tough. Didn't want to go through that again. And so Ronald said, "Hey, Dwaine, why don't you come work with me over at my law office?" It's on Route 1. It has a Princeton address, but it's technically West Windsor, just north of Quaker Bridge Mall at a complex there. So I ended up working with Ronald for a number of years. We had a partnership called Ponder and Williamson. Eventually, I wanted to be in downtown Trenton near the courthouses. So our firm basically split at that time, and I started my own firm down in Trenton in 2010. So I've been at that office ever since.
Amazing. That's great. Okay, I was checking up on you. I Googled you. So
what did you find?
Yeah, I did.
Hopefully it's all good stuff on there.
See, after you leave, I have all this other stuff I'm going to add to the podcast and say, hey, did you guys know? But so I saw a couple different things. But I saw that you're active in a church in Trenton.
Oh, that is correct. Yes. So I'm a deacon. And don't let the horns fool you. I actually am a deacon at Mount Sinai Seventh-day Adventist Church in Trenton. So ever since we came to the States, the same aunt, we call her Aunt Bertie, her real name is Freda Campbell, and my uncle Robbie were members of that church. And my mother's an Adventist, and so I followed that spiritual tradition and became an Adventist myself. So I still remain a deacon of Mount Sinai. I guess I've been there, has to be about 40 years now or something like that.
Right. So, on the council, you're doing all these other things before you became council, active in the church, doing things there. And then I also saw you were connected with Mercer County Community College for a while.
Yes. I served on the board of trustees there. So, right. That was such a labor of love. It's interesting because when I was in high school at Trenton High, I actually took classes at Mercer County College also. So when I got to Georgetown, I actually had enough credits. I must have had at least about 9 credits or so, college credits already. So about 3 classes, which means my last semester, I think only took maybe 1 or 2 classes my final semester. It is because of Mercer County College. So I did, growing up in Trenton, I took any advantage of every Mercer County College always had an amazing program. So I took advantage of every program they had. So I always have love for Mercer County College, and particularly the James Kearney campus, which is located in downtown Trenton. So fast forward years later, I had the county executive, Brian Hughes, asked me if I wanted to serve on the board of trustees there, which was certainly an honor. Certainly labor of love. Required a lot of work. It was a volunteer position. But as I mentioned, it was such a labor of love. When I was elected here, there's actually a state law, which I don't know if I fully agree with it, or agree with most people's interpretation of it. But it says that if you are an elected official in the state, you lose your vote on publicly funded colleges. because they believe there's a conflict somewhere. I mean, I could kind of intuit it, but I have to search real deep to intuitively see what the conflict is. I can see if I was on the board of commissioners that helps fund the college, but that is the law. And in fact, Mayor Freda out in Robbinsville and I served together, and at this time he didn't have his vote, so we were thinking about legally challenging it. But I figured there's only 24 hours in a day, and I had a full-time job. I was going to be on council, I'm going to have my liaisons. I just couldn't do it all. You know, you want to do so much in one lifetime, but unfortunately, like I said, time is finite. So I had to. So I resigned from the board so I could put more time into being a councilman here.
Yeah. And I'll just put a plug in for Mercer County Community College. I also attended there for a little bit. In between, I was on the 3-college 8-year plan. And so part of the time I spent there, and I thought it was a great experience.
It's great school.
It's a great resource for people in Mercer County.
Absolutely,
definitely take advantage of.
Absolutely.
All right, so let me ask you this question, just because we're gonna wrap up shortly. But you're stepping off of Princeton Council. You're focusing on Trenton. I get all that. Right. So is there a political future for you at some point? Are you given thoughts that, I don't know, maybe you're doing something on January 2nd. I have no idea. But, down the road, do you see yourself jumping back into politics? Is that a question I can ask you? I have no idea.
Of course. At the end of the day, my goal is, what do I do to make the world a better place, or my little corner of the world, so to speak? To me, politics is really a facilitator. I know the same thing for you, Mark. We're not there because we want to have that title. We're there because we want to get something done. And maybe that position is the best facilitator to get there. When I talk about Trenton, I'm also talking about Princeton, because what happens in Trenton affects Princeton. Out of our property taxes, 30% of what we raise goes to the county. Where does a lot of that county money go? It goes to Trenton in different ways, whether through Mercer County Board of Social Services, et cetera. So what happens in Trenton affects us. And when I say Trenton, I'm not just talking about as capital Trenton, but literally what happens on the streets of Trenton affects Princeton. We live in an interdependent world. And here we are meshed together. And in fact, I really believe that we tend to be very progressive folks here in Princeton. I really believe if we put certain resources in, we have a great university right here. I would say arguably, except for Georgetown University, arguably the best university in Rutgers, arguably the best university, my two alma maters, arguably the best university in the country, if not the world, with a huge amount of resources, not endless resources, of course, but a huge amount of resources, both mental and I'll say intellectual resources, and material resources. And I really think if we collectively try to think of how we can help each other, we find out we also help ourselves. We look at the dark side of that. Remember, we just, a little over a month ago, we had the folks who stole the vehicle, right, end up in that really tragic car accident, 15-year-old from Newark. So we don't want to live in a bubble and think, because we have this great town, not seeing what's going on in the world around us, because if we don't, the world around us is going to come to us. So we don't want it to come in a negative way. So that's my very long-winded way of saying that we always have to think about how we affect each other, municipalities. Of course, we're subjected to state laws, New Jersey state law. We're subjected to federal laws. So we have to think of things very broadly. As far as me in politics, of course, there's possibilities. If I feel that a political position will be a great facilitator in getting things done and helping us to create a wonderful, much better society, I will certainly be willing to, I should say, sacrifice and right, put the time in. Because at the end of the day, we all know those who have served, in spite of folks coming on, talking, like sometimes we get comments that, we're doing things secretly and nefariously. None of us are getting rich off of this. Yeah. This is sacrifice. Yeah. This is blood, sweat, and tears, because we really believe in making things better. It's blood, sweat, and tears. That's what this is, right? And if anything, folks should be saying, I can't believe you're actually subjecting yourself to that. Really, this is a lot of sacrifice. So yes, it is a possibility I may be willing to do more sacrifice in the future.
And just one thing to anybody that's thinking of getting into public service in any way, whether it's running for office or just helping your community through these boards, committees, commissions, whatever it is, even though you've mentioned the sacrifice and all that, at the end of the day, it's interesting,
Right.
It's fun,
Yes.
and it's rewarding.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So
Yep.
public service is a great thing.
Yes. Don't get me wrong, because I used the word sacrifice a little too many times just now. It is certainly rewarding. There's nothing better than to contribute to seeing an excellent end result. In fact, I'll mention this right here. One of the most rewarding things for me here in Princeton is what we're doing on the affordable housing side. We have about 5 major affordable housing projects coming up. I mean, this is giving people that basic human right of a decent place to live. And there's, I would say, no better town to live in than in Princeton. So thinking of how many generations of people that us developing more affordable housing, how many generations of people this is going to affect. I mean, we're talking about things that's going to outlast us for centuries. So that is extremely rewarding. Nothing gets more rewarding than that.
So, Dwaine, thanks again for being here. Thanks for your time on the Princeton Council.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm going to thank you now for the stuff you're going to do in the future, because it's obvious you're staying involved. So, anyway, great day, and thanks again.
Oh, you're welcome, Mayor. It's been an honor and pleasure, as I mentioned before, serving the people of Princeton. It's been an honor working with you, Mayor, and I'm always here to contribute how and where I can.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the 9th episode of the Princeton Podcast, produced as a community service by HG Media, providing audio, video, and website design services here in Princeton since 1999. If you enjoyed this episode of the Princeton Podcast, please share it with your friends and be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.